A $220 billion World Cup in a desert nation that forced the entire global football calendar to bend around it. 430-page investigation into systemic bribery, ruthlessly buried and reduced to a 42-page joke. And at least 6,500 migrant workers who never lived to see the opening ceremony. This is the story of FIFA, how the world's game was stolen. December 2, 2010, Zurich, Switzerland. 22 men are about to decide hosts for 2 World Cups. Sepp Blatter opens the first envelope, Russia, 2018. He opens the second, Qatar, 2022. A nation with no World Cup history, no real stadiums, summers that hit 50 degrees Celsius. It had just beaten the United States, 14 votes to 8. Episode 3, The Price. How does a country with zero football pedigree beat a football superpower? The man who pulled this off had already tried to bribe his way into the FIFA presidency, got caught, then banned. But, what we didn't tell you, buying elections wasn't new for him. He'd already bought something much bigger. Mohamed bin Hammam, Qatari billionaire, president of Asian football. Qatar's official position, he had no role in their World Cup bid. None at all. But in 2014, the Sunday Times published documents leaked from inside his own organization. 10 slush funds, run by bin Hammam, in the years leading up to the vote. $200,000 wired to football federations in 30 African countries. 400,000 more, handed out in cash at private dinners with the men who'd be voting. Ivory Coast's federation alone took $800,000. The instruction attached to it, in writing, push very hard the bid of Qatar. His corruption didn't stop with Qatar. His first ban, the Caribbean bribery scandal, didn't even survive an appeal. FIFA overturned it. Insufficient evidence. But 5 months later, a separate audit caught up with him anyway. For 9 years as president of Asian football, he'd been spending the Confederation's money like his own. $700,000 on himself and his family. $100,000 for his wife. A Bugatti watch for himself. Nearly $5,000 for his daughter's cosmetic dentistry. Auditors also found a $14 million payment, quietly routed to him personally, through a no-bid broadcasting contract he'd approved himself. This time, the ban stuck. For life. But the bid had already gone through. Qatar had already won. Bribery wasn't Qatar's only weapon. While they were buying votes, they were also working to destroy the competition. The same leak revealed Qatar was paying a PR firm $80,000 a month. Their job, plant negative stories about rival bids, spy on the competition, manufacture protests designed to look like grassroots anger. The targets? The United States, Australia, Qatar's 2 biggest threats. Some of the people Qatar hired to run this campaign were former CIA officers. On the afternoon of December 2nd, both World Cups were sold in the same room. Jack Warner took over $5 million to vote for Russia. For Qatar, Nicolas Leos of Paraguay and Ricardo Teixeira of Brazil took bribes. And Jack Warner, the same man who'd just been paid for Russia, took $2 million more to vote for Qatar as well. One man, paid twice in one afternoon. By 2015, 14 officials had been criminally charged with wire fraud, racketeering, and money laundering in US federal court. But the vote had already happened, and FIFA had known exactly what it was. FIFA had already been warned. Its own technical evaluation team inspected every 2022 bid before the vote. Every other bid passed. Qatar's didn't. FIFA's inspectors rated it high operational risk, the worst score of any candidate. The reason, the heat. Average daytime temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius. Players, FIFA's own report warned, could be in danger just stepping onto the field. 22 men read that warning, then voted for Qatar anyway. 4 years later, FIFA finally investigated itself. American attorney Michael Garcia spent 2 years on it. His report couldn't prove bribery outright, but it found something almost as damning, a trail of unexplained money. One thread, a middleman, a gas deal, and Thailand's football federation, whose support for Qatar arrived at a suspiciously convenient moment. Garcia found dozens more like it. FIFA's response: bury it. They released a 42-page summary instead of his report, written by their own ethics judge, clearing Qatar and Russia completely. The real report stayed buried for 3 more years, until a leak forced FIFA's hand in 2017. That's when the world finally saw what FIFA had been hiding. The buried report wasn't the only attempt at accountability that went nowhere. Remember Sepp Blatter tried twice for the Platini payment and acquitted twice. Switzerland also charged him with a third fraud, separately, over the Qatar vote. 3 criminal trials, 3 acquittals. The man who ran FIFA through all of it was never convicted of anything. And while Swiss courts were still debating jurisdiction, the construction had already begun. Qatar won the bid in 2010. The tournament was 12 years away. They had almost nothing to build it with. No stadiums, no metro system, barely any roads. Qatar had to construct an entire country's worth of infrastructure from scratch in the desert. The labor came from outside Qatar. Hundreds of thousands of workers from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. They arrived under a system called Kafala. Your employer holds your visa. Your employer decides if you can leave the country. Your employer decides if you can even change jobs. Human rights groups have a simpler name for it: modern-day servitude. This is what that looked like for one person. Among those hundreds of thousands, let's talk about one. His name was Rupchandra Rumba, 24 years old, from Nepal. He borrowed money to buy his plane ticket. The plan was straightforward: work, pay off the debt, give his 8-year-old son a better life. He was a scaffolder on Education City Stadium, one of the flagship venues of the 2022 World Cup, the one you watched games on. 63 days after arriving in Qatar, Rupchandra didn't wake up. The official cause of death: natural causes. A 24-year-old, in otherwise good health. His family has received no compensation. They are still waiting. Today. Rupchandra was not an exception. He was a pattern. In 2021, journalists at The Guardian decided to do what Qatar's government never did: count the actual dead. What they found? At least 6,500 deaths. Qatar's official figure: 400 to 500. FIFA's official position: 37. Here's why those numbers are so different. Qatar doesn't require deaths to be categorized by worksite. So the paperwork looks exactly like Rupchandra's: natural causes, no project listed, no connection to the World Cup. Just natural causes. The true number will never be known. The Guardian's own count excluded workers from Kenya, from the Philippines, from several other countries. 6,500 is not the total. It's the flow. So what did FIFA do when they found out? Nothing. FIFA did nothing. Before the tournament, a coalition of human rights organizations asked for one thing: a $440 million compensation fund for the workers, for the families like Rupchandra's. FIFA never funded it. They instead launched something called a legacy fund, money for refugee programs and heat safety research. It does not pay a single dollar to the families of the workers who died building the stadiums. No accountability, no justice. Just the tournament. In 2022, the World Cup finally happened. In November. Not June. FIFA moved the entire global football calendar, because Qatar's own summer heat made playing impossible, exactly as its inspectors warned 12 years earlier. It was the first Winter World Cup in history. Every stadium fitted with artificial cooling systems. Total cost to Qatar: over $220 billion. 15 times what Russia spent in 2018. 15 times what Brazil spent in 2014. The most expensive World Cup ever played, built on a bid that FIFA's own inspectors said should never have won. So here is what it all cost. At least $5 million in documented bribes, 22 votes, 8 officials criminally charged. And here is what it actually cost: 6,500 deaths counted by journalists, 37 counted by FIFA. $220 billion spent, $440 million asked for compensation, $0 paid, and not one person went to prison for it. Nobody was ever held accountable, not financially, not criminally. The closest anyone came was FIFA's own ethics committee, not a courtroom, banning Blatter from football, and that meant FIFA needed a new president. Gianni Infantino got the job and promised all of this would end. Within a year, he fired the only people inside FIFA investigating its corruption, and secretly met the prosecutor investigating the Platini payment behind closed doors. What were they talking about? That's episode 4. Subscribe now so you don't miss it.